4.2 Develop Project Management Plan. Develop Project Management Plan is a process of defining, preparing and coordinating all plan components and consolidating them into an integrated project management plan. The key benefit of this process is the production of a comprehensive document that defines the basis of all project work and how work will be performed. This process is performed once or at predefined points in the project. The first thing we need to establish in this lesson is what is a project management plan. It turns out it's not as simple a question as it seems. The project management plan is defined as the document that describes how the project will be executed, monitored and controlled and closed. And that's from the PMBOK Guide, page 716. As we've seen at the start of this lesson, it's also a comprehensive document that defines the basis for all project work and how the work will be performed. But these definitions simply tell us what a project management plan does. We're no closer to understanding what it is. But first of all, I will tell you what it is not. The project management plan is not a project schedule. This is a very common mistake made by many inexperienced project managers. Many times I've asked a project manager to show me their project plan and they've brought out a schedule. It is very important that you understand the difference between a project management plan, also called a project plan, and a project schedule, because firstly, a lot of the PMBOK Guide simply won't make sense if you confuse the two, and just as importantly, you will misunderstand a number of examination questions if the question's talking about a project management plan being a group of 18 subplans and baselines, and you think you're just talking about the schedule. The actual contents of the project management plan will depend on the project. It will depend on variables such as the size and complexity of the project. For example, if you have a 4-day project, you're going to have a simpler project management plan than on a 5-year project. It will also depend on the application area. I mentioned 3 projects. One is medical research, one is for construction of a deep sea oil rig, and the third is a wedding plan. You would expect the number and complexity of the subplans and baselines to be different from each. On very simple projects, you may be able to fit up to 4 plans to each page. But on larger projects, huge ones, each plan can cover thousands of pages. The project management plan should be baseline. This means it should be agreed and formally signed off. But again, it depends on the project. On small projects, it would be too onerous to baseline the whole project management plan, but at a minimum you should baseline the scope, schedule and cost plans so that the project execution can be measured and compared against them. This enables you to measure and control the project performance. There's an old saying, you can't control what you can't measure. Creating the project management plan is largely an informal process, and you will find yourself as project manager making hundreds if not thousands of small changes, but once the project management plan has been baseline, everything changes. Ad hoc changes are forbidden. Any and all changes can be made only if they've been approved by the Perform Integrated Change Control process. This involves a group of experts, usually called the CCB or Change Control Board, reviewing formal change requests in an holistic fashion. This means they take the whole project into consideration before deciding whether or not to approve change requests. Changes are something that catch a lot of people out. There are 4 main types of change, which are corrective actions, preventative actions, defect repairs, and additional ideas or content requests by stakeholders. Corrective actions are where the project performance is falling short and needs to be realigned. And a defect repair is a modification to a non-conforming product or product component to bring it back into conformance. Preventative action is where future project performance is predicted to fall short and needs to be realigned to prevent it happening. But the important thing to note is that although some changes must be done, they are still changes, and as I said before, all changes without exception must be approved by the integrated change control process. One or two questions on the exam will catch you out if you don't understand this basic principle. The exam questions will try to make you panic, and they will instill a sense of urgency. They will say, for example, on your project something needs to be fixed. You know how to fix it. It's holding up the entire project. The customer's getting angry. They're threatening legal action. Do you A, fix the problem quickly and make the customer happy? B, submit a change request to the change control board and wait for approval? C, outsource the problem to a team of experts in Tibet? D, phone senior management and strongly say you need immediate authorization to fix the problem? Option A seems much better than option B, but option B is always correct for the reasons I said before. A major cause of problems on a project comes from people making changes without being able to see beyond their own limited area and thus causing further damage. Or the problems can come from a lack of experience or understanding. Many years ago I was working for an information technology company in Belfast in Northern Ireland, and one of our salespeople had some experience in engineering but obviously had very little experience in sales because he seldom sold anything. But for whatever reason he decided to become a computer engineer, and for whatever reason our management decided to let him become a computer engineer, and he moved down to our Dublin branch, which is down in Southern Ireland, and they did most of the engineering for us. After he'd been there for a few days, he phoned me and said he had no computer power supplies and needed some urgently. So I sent him a pack of 10 new power supplies. A week later, I got another phone call from him. He said he had no computer power supplies and needed some urgently. I assumed that the last pack hadn't arrived and asked him to check with the post office. He said, yeah, the 10 power supplies arrived, but you sent me faulty ones. I need more and make sure they're good ones this time. I told him they were brand new. I could understand maybe one being faulty, but it was impossible for all of them to be faulty. He said, well, they were faulty. There was a computer that needed a new power supply, so I installed one of yours. But as soon as I switched the computer on, the power supply blew up. So I installed the next one. It immediately blew up as well. I tried every one of those power supplies and every one of them blew up. Every one of them was faulty. Now imagine if this person had to submit a change request before installing each power supply. I think the integrated change control system would have saved most of those power supplies. Okay, back to our project management plan. You can expect to receive approved change requests throughout the project, and therefore the project management plan will be updated, or as to say it another way, it will be progressively elaborated. Now let's look at the inputs for the developed project management plan process. Number one is a project charter, because this is the distilled knowledge of all really of what we know in the project so far at a high level, which is not a lot, and so this document will only be a couple of pages, but at least it gives us a good starting point and a good overview. This high level information will be elaborated into the various components of the project management plan. Input number two is actually the outputs from other processes. The PMBOK guide doesn't specify the individual outputs at this stage, but they will be outputs from processes described in sections 5 through 13 of the PMBOK guide, which are equivalent to modules 5 through 13 of this course. Input number 3 is the enterprise environmental factors that can influence the developed project management plan process. These include government or industry standards, e.g. product standards, quality standards, safety standards and workmanship standards, legal and regulatory requirements and or constraints. A requirement is something you must do. For example, you must provide a safe workplace for your staff, and a constraint is something you can't do. For example, you can't release personally identifiable information from a database. You can't schedule a person to work 2 days per week if they're contracted to work just 1 day, and so on. Project management body of knowledge for vertical markets, e.g. construction, and or focus areas, e.g. environmental, safety, risk or agile software development. This seems a little confusing at first glance because the information technology industry and the military, for example, have their own version of PMBOK, and you can see with the release of PMBOK 6th edition that there's an additional guide for Agile. Organizational structure, culture and management practices and sustainability. Organizational governance framework, which is the structured way to provide control, direction and coordination through people, policies and procedures to get organizational, strategic and operational goals. Infrastructure, e.g. existing facilities and capital equipment. For example, if you're planning a construction project, you would check to see what construction machinery and vehicles are already in the company, so you can work out if you can borrow them from your project or if you can hire them from outside, and you'll check this availability by looking at the relevant project calendars for those resources. Input number 4, organizational process assets, which normally follows enterprise environmental factors in the list of inputs. The organizational process assets that we're looking for this process would include organizational process policies, processes and procedures. Project management plan template, which includes guidelines and criteria for tailoring the organization's set of standard processes to satisfy the specific needs of the project, and project closure guidelines for requirements such as the product validation and acceptance criteria. Change control procedures, including the steps by which official organizational standard policies, plans, procedures and any project documents will be modified and how these changes will be approved and validated. Monitoring and reporting methods, risk control procedures and communication requirements. Project information from previous similar projects, for example, scope, cost, schedule and performance measurement baselines, project calendars, project schedule network diagrams and risk registers. All of these can be recycled as templates in your new project, and historical information and lessons learned repository. That's the end of the inputs. Now let's have a look at the Develop Project Management Plan tools and techniques. Tools and techniques number 1 is expert judgment from individuals or groups with specialist knowledge or training in the following topics. Tailoring the project management process to meet the project needs, including the dependencies and interactions among those processes and the essential inputs and outputs. Developing additional components of the project management plan if needed. You can read through the PMBOK guide. It routinely implies that any list such as components of plans or reports, inputs, tools and techniques, outputs, processes and so on should be considered the minimum required to be following best practice. You should feel free to extend any of these lists if you feel confident to do so, but understand the implications of doing so and allow for the extra complexity of the work required. Determining the tools and techniques to be used for accomplishing these processes. Developing technical and management details to be included in the project management plan. Determining resources and skill levels needed to perform project work. We will learn more about this in the module Project Procurement Management. Defining the level of configuration management to apply to the project. Configuration management is like the version control system, and it can also include the document control system. A configuration management is essential for a project, as you always need to be certain that you're using the latest version of something. But configuration management requires resources to manage it, and not every item on the project needs to be controlled, so it's all a matter of striking a balance. Determining which project documents will be subject to formal change control processes, and prioritising the work on the project to ensure that the project resources are allocated to the approved work at the appropriate time. We will learn more about this in the lesson on project schedule control. Tools and techniques number 2, data gathering, and the techniques we can use here would be brainstorming. The project team members, along with the subject matter experts and stakeholders, will meet to collect a lot of ideas about the project approach and about the project plan. And then they'll work together to select the best ideas from those. And as I've mentioned elsewhere, this is a good idea to get, it's a good idea to get a facilitator involved in this so that you can get everything focused and getting cleaned up really quickly. Checklists, many organizations have standardized checklists for processes such as this to ensure that nothing is missed out. Developing a project management plan is a complicated procedure, but using a checklist makes this process simpler and reduces risk. Focus groups. These bring stakeholders together into a single room or even by video conference to discuss the project management approach and the integration of the different components of the project management plan. Interviews. These are usually one-on-one, or there could be several interviewers to one interviewee. They can be scripted, i.e. working from a list of predetermined questions, or the questions may be informal. Number 3, interpersonal and team skills. The interpersonal team skills used when developing the project management plan include conflict management. This is important, especially where the stakeholders are from diverse groups or cultures, or where stakeholders strongly hold opposing views. You need to get them working together and supporting one single plan. Facilitation, which I mentioned before, trained facilitators can make meetings, focus groups and brainstorming sessions efficient and effective. And if the facilitator is brought in from outside, they can ease tensions by not being suspected of taking sides. Meeting management. Okay, these are just the skills necessary to run a meeting. For example, creating an agenda, taking minutes, working through action lists, acknowledging speakers, controlling time slots, proposing and voting on motions, making sure you start and end on time, all that sort of thing. Providing the pizzas. Tools and techniques. Number 4, meetings. The PMBOK guide says meetings are used to discuss the project approach, determine how work will be executed to accomplish the project objectives, and establish the way the project will be monitored and controlled. There's a special type of meeting called a kick-off meeting, and it appears in examination questions down then. As the name suggests, it's held just before the project starts. According to the PMBOK guide, its purpose is to communicate the objectives of the project, gain the commitment of the team for the project, and explain the roles and responsibilities of each stakeholder. The kick-off may occur at different points in time depending on the characteristics of the project. For small projects, there is usually just one team that performs planning and the execution. In this case, a kick-off meeting occurs shortly after initiation, and it will be in the planning process group because the team is involved in planning. In large projects, a project management team normally does the majority of the planning, and the remainder of the project team is brought on when the initial planning has been completed at the start of the development or implementation. In this instance, the kick-off meeting takes place within processes in the executing process group. Multi-phase projects will typically include a kick-off meeting at the beginning of each phase. And this kick-off information, I think you will find, could turn up on the examination. And lastly, we come to the outputs from the developed project management plan process. Naturally, the main output is the project management plan. This describes how the project will be executed, monitored and controlled, and closed. It integrates and consolidates all the subsidiary management plans and baselines and other information necessary to manage the project. The needs of the project determine which components of the project management plan are needed. The project management plan components would include subsidiary management plans, such as scope management plan, which defines how each process is managed, requirements management plan, schedule management plan. Note that this is the schedule management plan, not the project schedule. Cost management plan, the quality management plan, resource management plan, communications management plan, risk management plan, procurement management plan, and stakeholder engagement plan. Not stakeholder management plan. That was a change that came in with the 6th edition of the PMBOK guide. They were engaging with our stakeholders. It also contains baselines for comparing planned against actual results. Scope baseline. This is actually a combination of three baselines: the approved version of the scope statement, work breakdown structure, and associated work breakdown structure dictionary. The schedule baseline and the cost baseline. Additional components. Most components of the project management plan are produced as outputs from other processes, though some are produced during this process, the develop project management plan process. These components developed so far of this process will be dependent on the project. However, they often include change management plan, which describes how the change requests throughout the project will be formally authorized and incorporated. Configuration management plan describes how the information about the items of the project and which items will be recorded and updated so that the product, service or result of the project remains consistent and or operative. Performance measurement baselines, which is an integrated scope, schedule, cost plan for the project work against which project execution is compared to measure and manage performance. The project life cycle. The life cycle chosen is dependent upon the organization and the area of the project work. Development approach, for example, predictive, iterative, agile or a hybrid method. Management reviews identifies the points in the project when the project manager and relevant stakeholders will review the project progress to determine if performance is to be expected or if preventative or corrective actions are necessary. As you can see, the project management plan contains a lot of plans and baselines. The project management plan uses over 30 project documents, but for the exam, please remember that these documents are not included in the project management plan. A typical project management plan contains 18 elements made up of 12 subplans, 4 baselines, the project life cycle description and the development approach. Please study Table 4.1 in the PMBOK guide, which is a representative list of the project management plan components and project documents. And this is the end of a lesson, Develop Project Management Plan. Next lesson is 4.3, Direct and Manage Project Work. Please read the corresponding chapter in the PMBOK guide before watching this video.